Hey, what's up YouTube? Dom, the smartphone guy, coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to take a look at a brand new device from a company called Nuu Mobile. That's Nuu Mobile, and this is the G3. So this was actually announced back in January at CES, and it is available right now for pre-order for $200. Pretty fantastic and compelling device at that price point. So lots of awesome specs. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. We'll talk about the specs in just a little bit. So real nice presentation with the box. Looks like I have it backwards there though. So that is the box it comes in. And here is the actual device. Now I've actually been using it a little bit. I wanted to get it up and running before I actually started this video because this is more of a first impressions video, but I have been using the device just a little bit. So some of the specs you can see right here. So we have a 5.7 inch 18:9 aspect ratio device in terms of the display. Now it says HD plus. This is a 720 stretched out display, and honestly so far it looks pretty decent, but we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. So we have the MediaTek Helio P25 processor that's clocked at 2.39 gigahertz. I've reviewed quite a few phones with that processor, and my results have varied a little bit, but if you're interested and you're kind of familiar with Snapdragon devices, this is very similar in my experience to a Snapdragon 625, only the Snapdragon 625 tends to be more stable, but in terms of processing speed, I would say it's right on par with that. So this does have 4G LTE. It will work great in the US for AT&T, T-Mobile. It has band 12, has band 17. It doesn't have band, what is it, 60 or whatever the 600 megahertz band is for T-Mobile, so that's the only one it's missing, but that's hardly being used at all yet anyway. So we have 4 gigs of onboard storage, or sorry, 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of onboard storage. We have a fingerprint sensor. We'll test that out in a little bit. And then on the front, we have a 13 megapixel camera, and on the rear, we have a 13 and 5 megapixel camera. Now, I believe that 5 megapixel camera is monochrome because when you go into the camera settings, it actually gives you the option for monochrome, but I'm not certain on that. It looks like we do have a flash up here as well as some we'll set that off to the side, as well as it looks like a proximity sensor there, and we're going to go ahead and take this off the back. Now, a couple of things that I will mention right off the bat is that one thing that really kind of sets this phone apart is, number one, for this price point, it's really hard to find a device that looks this beautiful. So again, it's got a 5.7 inch. Now this again is only a 720p display, but when you look at it, it's really hard to tell that this is not full HD. So I think the display looks absolutely fantastic. So for being 720, it looks really great. So when it comes to, again, the build, we have a beautiful glass back here. That is not something you often get with a phone at this price point. Now, that could be a negative. Obviously, you can see right now already it's collecting fingerprints, but we have that nice metal chassis around here with the glass back and glass front. So we got that sandwich, glass on front, glass on back feel. Now, in terms of what you get in the box, you do get this really, really thin TPU case. So this is very thin. It's not going to give you a whole lot of protection. But at least you gave something. It's not completely just a bare phone. I do wish they would have included a screen protector. A lot of the phones that you get that are unlocked will oftentimes come with a screen protector as well. So this does not come with a screen protector. You get the instruction booklet here. You do get a USB Type-C to headphone jack adapter, so unfortunately that means that the phone does not have a headphone jack, but the good news is that it does have Type-C, which is kind of rare still for phones at this price point, unfortunately, so that's kind of rare. And we'll talk about a couple other phones to compare it to in just a little bit. Now, in terms of the charging, it does say that you get fast charging here, so it looks like this is a 2 amp charger, so that is definitely fast charging. And then, of course, we get our Type-C cord here as well. So I'm not going to open that up. We'll go ahead and set that off to the side. So that's what you get in the box. Now, in terms of the phone itself, it is running Android 7.1.1, so it's not quite up to date. So we'll go down here. So there you see it, Android 7.1.1. Now it is running a launcher on top of that. It's a very, very basic launcher, not a whole lot built into the settings here. So if I go into the settings, you'll notice it pretty much looks like stock Android here. If you're used to Android N or Android Nougat, it pretty much looks like stock Android Nougat. There are just a handful of things here. So I've actually loaded a number of apps on here, so you will get more than what you see here. I will also mention that on the top here we have our SIM tray. It is dual SIM, and on top of being dual SIM, not only is it dual SIM, but you can also include a micro SD card that has adaptable storage as well. So that's a thumbs up there. So you can see, let's see how many apps I have running in the background at the moment. So really not a whole lot, so like 4 or 5. But you can see if I go back into the settings here, okay, it didn't keep, yeah, there we go. All right, so go back to the settings, and you can see it's using 1.3 gig of that 4 gigs of RAM in the background. So we do have some system gestures built in, so those are not native to Android Nougat. So you can see here we have slide to capture screenshot. Basically, you just slide 3 fingers down, and it's supposed to, there we go. All right, so it did it. So that one works. And then we have slide 3 up to do the camera. We're not going to do that one quite yet. We can do 2 fingers for volume, and then double tap to lock and launch the camera using the power button twice. In terms of the power button, I will mention the power button feels really good, but the volume up and down, they feel a bit mushy. So just kind of a heads up there. That's the only thing about the build I feel like doesn't feel super premium, but we do have Type-C, a speaker down here, and a microphone. But other than that, other than the volume, I would say that everything else feels very, very premium. But going back into the settings here, again, really nothing here that stands out other than under the fingerprint sensor. We do have just a handful of gestures we can use with the fingerprint sensor, so we can use it to take photos, recent tasks, and go back to the home screen. I actually had it set on that one for a little while, but found that I ended up going home far too often when I was accidentally touching the fingerprint sensor. So one thing I wish they did include is the ability to pull down the notification shade. So for example, another phone in this class, this is the Huawei Mate SE. This one gives you the option using the fingerprint sensor to pull down your notifications. So that would be a nice gesture that they could include here, but unfortunately Nuu did not include that. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the camera app here. So in terms of the camera, you can see, of course, we have that dual flash on the back. We have a single flash up here on the front. We do have HDR there. Of course, we can turn it around for selfie photos. I'm not going to show that quite yet. So for video, let's see what we got in terms of quality. So go down here, and my guess is that we can only shoot in 1080p, but it looks like right there. So okay, we do have the ability to shoot in 4K, so that actually surprises me a little bit. So it doesn't, I can't see where it shows. Let's see, audio mode. So I don't see anything where it says. So I'll have to test that 4K quality, also that 1080p quality. But it doesn't appear that there's any kind of image stabilization, which I definitely would not expect at this price point anyways. In terms of photo, again, we have 13 and 5 megapixel cameras on the rear. So we do have, of course, HDR. I already mentioned that. Let's go down here, and let's see here. ZCD. I'm not really sure what that is. Somebody might have to help me out with that. That might be some kind of stabilization there. So we can do some Pro mode here, so we can adjust our white balance, our ISO, anti-flicker, so we can actually go into a Pro mode over here. But here's our portrait mode. So this is kind of cool. This can actually allow you to change your f-stop here, so that's going to blur out the background. So at f11 we're not going to have really any blurred out background. But as we move over here into the 0.8 f-stop, that's going to basically blur out the background like crazy, and bring into focus whatever you have it focus on. So there, focus on my hand, and we'll go back into the picture. So it should, okay, so there's a picture I did of my son. Notice that the background's all blurred out. So it did a pretty decent job, but when you zoom in on my son, it definitely lost some detail, but this was kind of a lower light photo. It wasn't super bright in the room I took the photo in, so let's zoom that out. And so you can kind of see in the background, it did a decent job of blurring things out. Not nearly as good as it did with my son. So that's kind of to be expected because it's a portrait mode. So we do have a beauty mode there, and you actually just slide. So there's panorama, so that's going to be for the wide angle, and then we have a mono. So that's why I was saying that it looks like there's I'm guessing that 5 megapixel camera is a mono sensor, because it does have that option. And then here's our pro mode. So we go in here and we can adjust the ISO. Oops, let's see. So it looks like it's just a slide over here, up to 1600 for ISO. So those low light photos. But yeah, so in terms of the camera, I'm going to have to do a lot more testing of that. Battery life, we have a 3000 milliamp hour battery, and I will say that I've been using this actually quite heavily up to this point, and it's done pretty well. In terms of performance, so one thing I want to mention here, so when I was downloading, I downloaded a bunch of apps. Most of these apps, it pretty much comes with stock. There's not a whole lot built on here that isn't basically just the normal stock apps you would get on Android. But I did add a few apps. I downloaded all my apps, basically transferred them over from another phone. And when I did that, I did feel that right around the fingerprint sensor, it got quite hot. Now, I played a couple of games. I was playing NBA Jam to test that out. What other game did I play? I didn't play Hill Climb Race or, Beach Buggy Racing. So not super heavy graphic intensive games, but kind of medium range graphics. And in both cases, I didn't have any heating, but when I was downloading all my apps, it did get noticeably warm. So actually, if I go into my gallery, I'll show you what I mean here. So I believe maybe in File Manager I might be able to find them. Was actually while I was downloading a bunch of apps, and right here you can see that it did get up to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and that was really noticeable next to the fingerprint sensor when I was downloading all those apps. Now again, when I was playing games, I didn't have that issue, so that is maybe just a slight issue. You probably won't experience that real often, but something at least worth mentioning that I did experience just a little bit of heat while it was downloading all those apps. Now, last thing I want to take a look at in terms of this device is we're going to take a listen to that speaker. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into YouTube, and we're going to take a listen to a song here that's royalty free. Now again, we only have a single bottom firing speaker here, so we're not going to get any kind of sound coming out of the speaker there. Alright, so in terms of the output of this speaker, I would say it's a pretty standard single firing speaker. It's not particularly loud. It's a little bit tinny. It's not a terribly quiet speaker, but definitely a little bit on the tinny side. It lacks a little bit in the bass, but that's kind of normal for a single bottom firing speaker. Alright, so a couple of the things I want to mention about this phone that really make it stand apart other than the build quality is the fact that this phone actually has NFC built in. Now that is a very, very rare thing for a phone at this price point. So I'll go ahead and show you here. If we go up into the settings, you will see that when we go into our more here, you can see here we do have the option for NFC. So that's a very rare thing for a phone at a $200 price point. So that makes it kind of stand apart, not only with the build quality, but also the fact that it includes NFC. Now, a couple of things that it doesn't have, of course, it doesn't have any kind of water resistance, so that's pretty normal. In fact, I don't know of any phones at this price point that have water resistance that I'm aware of without being a rugged phone. So overall, just a fantastic device. Now, what is the competition with the Nuu Mobile? Well, we have the Xiaomi Mi A1, which I would argue is probably its best competition. We do also have phones like the Honor 7X, so that also has dual cameras here as well. So the Honor 7X or the Huawei Mate SE, also another phone in this category. So this one has a couple negatives. It has micro USB for charging. It does not have dual band Wi-Fi. These two both have dual band Wi-Fi. This one does not. And then another phone that kind of fits into this category is also this one from Xiaomi. Now both of the Xiaomi devices don't have band 12 or band 17, so you're going to have to rely on probably band 4, which for me works just fine with T-Mobile, but the Huawei Mate SE and the Honor 7X both have those bands, so that's something that kind of makes these two more, I guess, US friendly in terms of the bands that they cover. So all great phones, all kind of in that same price category, so that's what this phone is up against here, and I would say it definitely sets itself apart in terms of the build quality and with the NFC included there. So is it the best phone at that price point? Well, I've used these phones quite heavily. I have not had a chance to use this one quite as much. Obviously today is my first day with it, so that is yet to be seen. We'll do some more testing with it, do a full review, maybe do some comparisons with these devices that we have here. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you. Thanks for watching, and I will see you